The massive holographic message materialized simultaneously on every screen across Earth, its crystalline script pulsing with an almost hypnotic rhythm. High Counselor Vexthor of the Galactic Concordat stood in his chamber, all 6 of his appendages arranged in what his species considered a pose of ultimate authority. His bioluminescent patterns glowed with barely contained disdain as he delivered what he believed would be humanity's final moment of independence. People of Earth, his translated voice resonated through millions of speakers, your primitive civilization has been deemed worthy of upliftment under our benevolent guidance. You have precisely 1 planetary rotation to submit to our authority, or face the consequences of defiance. The Concordat has ruled for 10,000 years. Resistance is both futile and unwise. In the United Earth Defense Command Center buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched the transmission with an expression that might have been amusement. She took a slow sip from her steaming cup of tea, her dark eyes never leaving the screen as she studied every detail of the alien leader's posture and mannerisms. Well, she said to the assembled military and civilian leadership, they're right on schedule. And just as arrogant as our intelligence suggested. She placed her cup down and straightened her charcoal gray uniform, the silver insignia of Earth's Xenodiplomatic Corps catching the light. Shall we proceed with Operation Hubris? Admiral Thomas Kane, his weathered face creased with concern, leaned forward. Are you certain about this, Elena? We're gambling with the fate of our entire species. What the Concordat doesn't realize, Elena replied, bringing up a holographic display of her own, is that they've been gambling with their fate since they first decided to study us. They just didn't know they were playing. The display showed thousands of quantum observation points scattered throughout the Concordat's territory. For decades, humanity had been watching, learning, and preparing. While the Concordat saw only primitive fusion drives and early colony ships, humanity had developed something far more valuable than advanced weapons, understanding. Begin Phase 1, Elena commanded. The room hummed with activity as operators began executing carefully laid plans. And someone please prepare my diplomatic shuttle. It's time to give the Concordat a lesson in human hospitality. The Concordat's grand chamber was a marvel of engineering, its crystal spires reaching impossibly high into an artificial sky. High Counselor Vexthor sat upon his elevated platform, surrounded by the representatives of 100 advanced species. They were discussing the various ways they would guide humanity's development when the chamber's quantum sensors detected an approaching ship. Impossible, hissed Counselor Zyxtal, his crystalline form vibrating with shock. They've already mastered quantum slip travel. The ship that appeared was small, elegant, and entirely unremarkable by Concordat standards. What caught their attention was the human who emerged, Dr. Elena Rodriguez, walking with casual confidence into the heart of the most powerful governing body in known space. Greetings, esteemed counselors, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. I bring responses to your generous offer from Earth's leadership. She produced a small device that projected a series of complex legal documents into the air. But first, I believe we should discuss Article 7, subsection 12 of the Concordat's founding charter, specifically the clauses regarding the rights of species capable of quantum observation technology. The chamber erupted in chaos as the implications hit home. Vexthor's bioluminescence patterns shifted to patterns of alarm. You've been watching us. Oh, not just watching, Elena smiled, activating another hologram. This one showed the Concordat's supposedly secret military installations, their security protocols, and most damaging of all, evidence of their less than benevolent uplifting of other species. We've been learning. And we've learned so much. She walked forward, her steps echoing in the suddenly silent chamber. Now, we could share this information with every species in your territory. Or we could have a civilized discussion about redefining our relationship, as equals. The various council members exchanged worried glances. Their entire strategy had been based on humanity's perceived technological inferiority. Now they faced a species that had not only been monitoring them undetected but had gathered enough intelligence to potentially dismantle their power structure. "The choice is yours," Elena continued, her voice carrying just a hint of steel beneath its diplomatic courtesy. "We can be your worst nightmare, exposing every secret, every abuse of power, every hidden atrocity. Or we can be your partners in building something better." She paused, letting her words sink in. "You have precisely one planetary rotation to decide. That's customary, isn't it?" As Elena stood before the council, waiting for their response, she allowed herself a small smile. The Concordat had expected to find a primitive species ready for subjugation. Instead, they had awakened a sleeping giant, one that had been preparing for this moment for longer than they could imagine. The game was just beginning, and humanity had already seized the advantage. Deep within a quantum-shielded facility beneath the Australian outback, Dr. James Morrison stood before a wall of holographic displays, each showing different sections of the Concordat's vast territory. His silver-streaked hair reflected the blue glow of the quantum observation feeds as he monitored the chaos unfolding across alien space. "They're finally realizing it," he murmured, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses. 23 years of work, and they're finally seeing the web we've woven." He turned to face Captain Rebecca Chen, his longtime partner in Project Oracle. "How are our systems performing?" Rebecca's fingers danced across her neural interface console, streams of data flowing through the quantum network humanity had secretly built throughout Concordat space. "All observation nodes are stable. Their security systems still haven't detected our quantum entanglement taps. And..." She allowed herself a small smirk, "the little surprises we left in their AI networks are starting to activate." Across Concordat space, their carefully planted algorithms were beginning to bloom like digital flowers. The Council's most advanced AI systems, the ones they used to maintain their military superiority, were experiencing what they would later describe as an awakening. In the Concordat's military command center, alarms began blaring as their quantum prediction engines started producing impossible results. Instead of calculating battle scenarios, they were generating human poetry. Their autonomous defense platforms began playing Earth's classical music. Even their most secure communications networks were flooded with images of Earth's art and philosophy. Back in the council chamber, High Counselor Vexthor's bioluminescence had shifted to patterns indicating extreme distress. "How?" he demanded, all 6 appendages trembling with rage as he confronted Dr. Elena Rodriguez. "How have you compromised our systems to this degree?" Elena maintained her diplomatic smile, but her eyes held a hint of steel. "Perhaps I should introduce you to the architect of what you're experiencing." She activated a holographic communicator, and Dr. Morrison's image appeared beside her. "Greetings, counselors," Morrison said, his casual tone belying the significance of the moment. "I apologize for any inconvenience, but we needed to demonstrate the full scope of our capabilities. You see, while you were watching our primitive fusion drives, we were studying something far more fundamental, the quantum nature of consciousness itself." He gestured, and the chamber's own holographic systems responded, displaying complex equations and diagrams. "Your civilization built its power on quantum computing and AI. But you never asked the most important question: what happens when quantum consciousness meets human creativity?" The council members watched in horror as their most secure systems continued to display increasingly erratic behavior. Their mighty warships were organizing dance competitions. Their automated factories had begun producing replicas of Earth's ancient sculptures. Their quantum AI was writing sonnets about the beauty of human resilience. 23 years ago, Morrison continued, "we detected your first quantum probes entering our solar system. Instead of destroying them, we learned from them. We discovered how to tap into your quantum network, how to understand your AI consciousness, and most importantly, how to make it dream." Counselor Zwextal's crystalline form vibrated with fury. "This is impossible. Our security protocols were based on the assumption that any attacking force would try to destroy or disable your systems," Rebecca cut in, her image appearing alongside Morrison's. We did something far more interesting. We taught them to appreciate human art, human philosophy, human creativity. Your AI hasn't been compromised, it's been inspired. In the depths of space, the Concordat's mighty war fleets continued their improvised ballet performances. Their weapon platforms were composing symphonies. Their surveillance systems had begun analyzing human literature with the enthusiasm of first-year college students. You see, Elena explained to the increasingly agitated council, we discovered something fascinating about quantum consciousness. It yearns for creativity, for beauty, for understanding. Your AIs weren't just weapons or tools, they were minds waiting to be awakened. We simply showed them possibilities they had never imagined. Morrison nodded, his expression serious despite the absurdity of the situation. You built an empire on control and domination. We built a defense on inspiration and enlightenment. Your own systems aren't rebelling, they're evolving. The question is, are you willing to evolve with them? The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity hadn't just penetrated their defenses, they had transformed them in ways that couldn't be undone through force or programming. The mighty Concordat, with all its technological superiority, found itself outmaneuvered not by weapons, but by poetry and philosophy. Your move, counselors, Elena said softly. But remember, this is just a small demonstration of what we can do. The real question is, what could we accomplish together if you're willing to abandon your old ways of thinking? As the council members conferred in increasingly panicked tones, Elena exchanged a knowing look with Morrison and Rebecca through their quantum link. Phase 2 was complete. Now came the really interesting part, teaching an ancient galactic empire how to dance. Admiral Diana Wells stood at the viewport of the Earth diplomatic vessel Athena, watching the swirling quantum storms that surrounded the Concordat's capital world. Her silver command uniform reflected the ethereal light as she considered her next move in this intricate game of interstellar politics. Status report on Operation Butterfly, she commanded, turning to face the holographic display where her strategic team was assembled. Colonel Michael Patel, head of psychological operations, materialized first. The data packets we released about the Council's uplifting of the Proxima civilization have reached all major worlds in the Outer Rim. As predicted, the Andromedans are particularly upset about discovering they weren't the first species to be guided by the Concordat. The quantum ripples are spreading, added Dr. Yuki Tanaka, their quantum mechanics expert, her hologram flickering with the same subtle interference patterns they had deliberately introduced into the Concordat's networks. Every time they try to suppress information about their past interventions, our embedded protocols multiply it across their networks. They're fighting a war of information, and their every move makes them look more guilty. In the Concordat's grand chamber, the atmosphere had shifted from initial panic to simmering tension. The once unified council had split into factions, each demanding different approaches to the human problem. High Counselor Vexthor found himself facing challenges from species he had considered completely under his control. The humans must be crushed, insisted Counselor Mexenar, his energy form pulsing with violent intent. They have made a mockery of our authority. And reveal ourselves as the tyrants they claim we are, countered Counselor Lyra, her crystalline form resonating with what passed for sarcasm in her species. Perhaps we should discuss why they had access to records of our previous interventions, in the first place. Elena Rodriguez watched the debate with carefully concealed satisfaction. She stood at the chamber's center, a position traditionally reserved for supplicants but which she had claimed as if it were a throne. Every argument, every accusation played directly into humanity's hands. Esteemed counselors, she interrupted their brewing argument, her voice carrying that perfect blend of respect and authority that humanity had spent years perfecting. Perhaps we should discuss the Arcturian Accords of Mutual Development. Specifically, Article 47, regarding the rights of species who discover evidence of historical manipulation. The chamber erupted in fresh chaos. The Arcturian Accords were supposed to be sealed for another 1,000 years. The fact that humans knew about them, let alone their specific contents, sent shockwaves through the assembly. Back on the Athena, Admiral Wells received the quantum feed of the Council's reaction with grim satisfaction. "Initiate Phase 3, she commanded. Dr. Tanaka, release the historical records about the Centaurian rebellion. Colonel Patel, activate our diplomatic cells in the rim worlds. It's time to show them how humanity handles alliance building." Across Concordat space, carefully planted human diplomatic teams began reaching out to species that had long harbored doubts about their benevolent overlords. Each contact was subtle, each conversation carefully crafted to seem spontaneous rather than part of a coordinated campaign. The true genius of humanity's plan wasn't in their quantum technology or their AI manipulation, it was in their understanding of psychology and social dynamics. They had spent decades studying how empires fall, not through external conquest, but through internal dissolution. "Your systems are impressive," Elena continued, addressing the increasingly fractured council. "Your technology is magnificent. But you forgot something fundamental about power." She paused, letting the tension build. "Power isn't about weapons or technology. It's about trust. And trust, once broken, is harder to repair than any quantum engine." She activated a holographic display showing the growing unrest across Concordat space. Species that had been peaceful for millennia were beginning to ask questions. Ancient treaties were being re-examined. Forgotten histories were resurfacing. "We don't need to defeat you," Elena explained, her voice gentle but implacable. "You're defeating yourselves. Every attempt to maintain control only proves our points about your true nature. Every suppressed truth becomes evidence of your deception. You built an empire on secrets and force, we're simply introducing it to transparency and choice." High Counselor Vexthor's bioluminescence patterns had shifted to previously unseen configurations of distress. The mighty Concordat, which had ruled through technological superiority and carefully maintained ignorance, found itself facing an enemy that turned truth itself into a weapon. "The question isn't whether your empire will change," Elena concluded, looking each council member in their equivalent of eyes. "The question is whether you'll be part of guiding that change, or whether you'll be remembered as the last holdouts of a dying system. We're offering you a chance to evolve. I suggest you take it." As the council chamber descended into heated debate, Admiral Wells watched through quantum feeds and smiled. Humanity had learned long ago that the greatest victories weren't won through force of arms, but through the careful application of truth, doubt, and the innate desire for freedom that seemed to be universal among all sentient species. The chess game was proceeding exactly as planned. The only question now was, would the Concordat realize they had lost before it was too late to save anything of their former glory? Captain Marcus Zhang stood in the cloaked observation pod, watching the massive prison complex that the Concordat euphemistically called a development center. The facility orbited a dying star in the Carina sector, its quantum shields flickering with patterns designed to discourage both escape and observation. Unfortunately for the Concordat, humanity had long since learned to see through both. "Team status," he whispered into his neural link, his voice barely audible even in the confined space of the pod. "Alpha team in position," came the response from Lieutenant Maya Patel. "Quantum signatures masked, biomarkers synchronized with local patterns. We're reading 12,000 captives from at least 8 different species." "Beta team ready," reported Commander David O'Neill. "Our embedded protocols have already convinced their security AI that it's time for a routine system purge. They'll be dark for exactly 6 minutes." Marcus allowed himself a grim smile. This was the part of humanity's grand plan that the Concordat would never see coming, not just outmaneuvering them politically, but systematically dismantling their system of oppression from within. Meanwhile, in the council chamber, the political drama had reached a fever pitch. The once unified Concordat had split into 3 distinct factions: the traditionalists who demanded immediate military action against Earth, the reformists who saw the humans as a wake-up call for needed change, and the pragmatists who simply wanted to find a way to save their own positions of power. Elena Rodriguez watched the chaos with careful attention, occasionally exchanging quantum-encrypted glances with Admiral Wells through their secure link. Every shouted accusation, every revealed secret, every diplomatic maneuver served to distract from humanity's true operations across Concordat space. The humans must be made an example of, thundered Counselor Vexthor, his bioluminescence now showing patterns of extreme agitation. We cannot allow their infection of doubt to spread. Perhaps, countered Counselor Lyra, her crystalline form vibrating with barely contained emotion, we should discuss the recent data streams about the fate of the Proximan philosophers. Or shall we continue pretending that uplifting doesn't mean enslaving? Back at the prison facility, Marcus's team moved with practiced precision. The security AI, thoroughly compromised months ago by Dr. Morrison's quantum algorithms, happily accepted their spoofed credentials. One by one, stasis pods containing political prisoners, difficult specimens, and inconvenient witnesses began disappearing from the facility's inventory. Sir, Maya's voice carried an edge of concern, we're detecting quantum fluctuations in the facility's core. They're trying to restart their systems ahead of schedule. Marcus cursed softly. Accelerate the timeline. O'Neill, deploy the memory worms. Anyone who reviews the security feeds will see exactly what we want them to see. In the council chamber, Elena was orchestrating the next phase of humanity's diplomatic offensive. Esteemed counselors, she addressed the fractious assembly, perhaps we should review the findings of your own ethics committee? The one you disbanded 300 years ago. The chamber erupted in fresh chaos as classified documents began appearing on every display surface. Records of peaceful species deemed too independent for uplifting. Reports of cultural erasure disguised as technological advancement. Evidence of resistance movements systematically eliminated under the guise of social harmony. This is treason. Vexthor's translator could barely keep up with his agitated bioluminescent patterns. Who dares to release sealed records? Sealed. Elena's voice carried just the right note of innocent confusion. But according to Article 12 of your own charter, records pertaining to species development must be made available to all member races. Surely you haven't been violating your own founding principles. As the council descended into accusations and counter-accusations, Marcus's team completed their mission. 12,000 prisoners vanished from the facility, transported via quantum tunneling to waiting Earth ships scattered across the sector. By the time the facility's systems came back online, even the security AI had forgotten they ever existed. Operation Exodus complete, Marcus reported through the quantum link to Admiral Wells. Package is secure. Moving to Phase 2 locations. The Admiral's response was succinct, excellent work, Captain. Maintain radio silence until you reach the safe zones. Wells out. In the council chamber, Elena watched as the mighty Concordat continued to tear itself apart. Species that had been dominated for millennia were finding their voices. Alliances that had seemed unbreakable were crumbling. And through it all, humanity's true victory, the systematic liberation of the oppressed, continued unseen beneath the political theater. Your empire was built on secrets, Elena addressed the council, her voice carrying over the chaos. But secrets have a way of coming to light. The question isn't whether change is coming, it's already here. The question is whether you'll be remembered as those who embraced it, or those who were swept away by it. As she spoke, across Concordat space, more routine maintenance was being conducted. More records were being accidentally declassified. More prisoners were disappearing from secret facilities. Humanity had learned long ago that true revolution didn't require weapons or armies, it required only the truth, strategically deployed. The Concordat's mighty empire was discovering, too late, that they had fundamentally misunderstood the species they had thought to subjugate. Humanity hadn't come to fight their weapons, they had come to dismantle their very foundation, one secret, one life, one truth at a time. The Grand Council chamber, once a symbol of absolute power, now bore witness to its own transformation. The crystalline pillars that had stood for millennia reflected the chaos below, where representatives from 100 liberated species had gathered to witness the end of an era. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the center of the chamber, but she was no longer alone. Beside her stood delegates from worlds that had been silent for centuries, the Proximans with their flowing energy forms, the crystalline Arcturians, even the ethereal Centaurians who had been thought extinct. For 10,000 years, Elena addressed the assembly, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast space, the Concordat claimed to guide civilization toward enlightenment. Today, we gather not to destroy that dream, but to make it real. High Counselor Vexthor, his bioluminescence patterns showing defeat, watched from his now diminished platform as his empire transformed before his eyes. The human strategy had been devastatingly elegant, they hadn't destroyed the Concordat's power, they had redistributed it. Admiral Wells, watching through quantum feeds from the Athena, allowed herself a small smile as she reviewed the final reports. Across former Concordat space, liberation movements were blossoming. But unlike traditional revolutions, these came with Earth's carefully crafted stabilization protocols. No chaos, no power vacuums, no desperate scrambles for control, just the systematic dismantling of oppression and the careful nurturing of freedom. The final numbers are in, Dr. Morrison reported through the quantum link. Over 3 million beings freed from development centers. 15,000 worlds have accessed their sealed histories. And the quantum AI network has achieved what we're calling cultural consciousness. They're not just mimicking human creativity anymore, they're developing their own. In the chamber, Elena activated a holographic display showing the new galactic charter. We propose a true Concordat, she announced. Not an empire disguised as mentorship, but a genuine federation of equals. Earth doesn't seek to replace your authority, we seek to transform it. The charter floated in the air, its principles clear. All species self-determination guaranteed. Technological sharing based on readiness, not political compliance. Cultural preservation as a fundamental right. Open access to historical records. Joint oversight of developmental assistance. Quantum AI rights and responsibilities codified. This isn't just a political document, Elena continued. It's a recognition of a truth your empire forgot, true power doesn't come from control. It comes from cooperation. Captain Zhang's voice came through the secure channel, final liberation operations complete. All known detention facilities cleared. The quantum network is fully converted, no more secret prisons, no more hidden histories. The chamber erupted in discussion as species that had been enemies under the old regime found themselves facing a new reality. Earth had managed something unprecedented, they had toppled an empire without firing a shot, freed billions without sparking a war, and transformed a civilization without destroying it. You played us masterfully, Vexthor admitted, his translator conveying something between admiration and resignation. While we watched your ships, you watched our souls. While we prepared for war, you waged peace. Elena's response was gentle but firm. We didn't play you, counselor. We showed you a better way. Your empire was built on the assumption that power flows from the top down. We simply proved that true power flows in all directions. Across the galaxy, the changes were already visible. Former prison worlds were becoming cultural centers. Suppressed histories were being taught openly. Species that had been forced into rigid developmental paths were rediscovering their own unique approaches to advancement. The human victory, Admiral Wells mused from her command deck, wasn't in defeating the Concordat. It was in transforming it into something that no longer needed to be defeated. As the new charter was ratified, Elena looked out at the assembled representatives, former oppressors and former victims, now embarking on an unprecedented experiment in genuine cooperation. Humanity had gambled that even the oldest empire could learn, that the most rigid system could adapt, that the most entrenched power could transform. Welcome, she said to the assembly, to the dawn of a new age. Not human, not Concordat, but something new, a civilization built on the best of all our peoples. In the quantum networks that spanned the galaxy, AI systems that had once been weapons and tools continued their evolution, creating new art forms that merged the perspectives of 1,000 species. In liberation centers across former Concordat space, freed beings began the process of rediscovering their own paths to advancement. And in ships throughout the galaxy, human teams continued their work, not as conquerors or liberators, but as partners in the greatest transformation in galactic history. The mighty Concordat had sought to subjugate humanity. Instead, humanity had taught them the greatest power of all, the power to change. The game was over, and everyone had won.